morning. It is Saturday morning, March 27th, and it's a special day for a couple of reasons. As you can see, I'm wearing my Jesus Loves Wichita Falls, Texas shirt, which means it's a Loving Our Neighbor Day, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But today is also very special on the Jewish calendar. Today is the last Sabbath before Passover. Passover begins in Israel at sunset today, and so this is the last Sabbath before Passover begins, and they call it the Great Sabbath. But it's also the 34th day in the season of Lent, and so we're going to get our testing today, and it's actually the last test that Jesus receives in the book of Matthew. So it's Matthew chapter 22, starting with verse 34. So let's take a look at that last test that Jesus receives. It says, but when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered themselves together. One of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. Now, this commandment by Jesus, this test, this is actually a very tricky question. It's a very difficult question because in the Hebrew Bible, there are 613 laws. And so the answer is very debatable. These guys have been debating on which one was more important. And so Jesus' answer could have been, well, they're all equally important, but that would have been debated. He could have picked one, and people would say, yeah, I think so. And others would say, no, I don't think so. So it's very debatable. It's like asking somebody, what's your favorite ice cream at Baskin-Robbins, right? There's so much to choose from. You can't say there's a wrong answer or a right answer. It's all whatever anybody's opinion is. But Jesus, he responds very definitively, and it silences the Pharisees. They are in awe at his answer. He says the great commandment is love God and love your neighbor. And actually, this commandment is exceedingly hard to do because God has not asked us to love the whole world, meaning people that you've never seen. He gets real with us, and he tells us that we are to love our neighbor. These are the people that we do see. In the other gospel, we hear that Jesus follows this up and he tells the parable of the Good Samaritan. And so the question, who's your neighbor in that scenario, isn't even the Samaritans are your neighbor. No, it's whoever has this need, whoever is in need, whoever you see. And so in my neighborhood, it's very crazy. We have this guy in our neighborhood who walks his dog. It's a huge dog with a 20-foot leash. And I'm not even exaggerating. This dog goes all up into everybody's yard and many complaints. Well, that's your neighbor. Our neighbor is filled with teenagers or young adults who drive their car too fast in the neighborhood. Or maybe it's the grumpy old man. Maybe it's the widow. Or maybe it's the single parent mom whose kids they really have no structure and they're just out there being kids. Or maybe it's that person who thinks differently politically than you. Those are all our neighbors because those are the people that we see. They're literally right there next door to you, across the street from you. Those are your neighbors. And it's a very difficult test to pass. In fact, I told you today is Loving Our Neighbor Day. Jesus hadn't called us to love all of Wichita Falls. Jesus loves all of Wichita Falls because Jesus knows all of Wichita Falls, right? We're called to love those that are directly surrounding our church. And that's what our Loving Our Neighbor ministry is all about. Going out to people, not who we chose to live there, but who God chose to live there. That's who we are ministering to. And those are people of different race, different faiths, different nationalities, different gender, whatever. And we're called to love them. And it's a very difficult test indeed. But it's amazing how Jesus' answer, it silenced all the Pharisees. This is the most amazing answer because they could have argued, they could have debated, but how do you argue and how do you debate against love God? Love your neighbor. Thank you guys so much for watching today. And if you're around town, help us out at 10 o'clock. And I pray that you guys have a blessed and amazing day.